My cousins stole my fiancé under my aunt's orders. They thought I'd stay silent, but what happened next turned their celebration into chaos. I'm 28, and I was engaged to this guy named Jake. He's 27. We'd been together for about 4 years, and last year we got engaged. It was supposed to be a small, intimate thing with close family and friends, but, well, it ended up being something a whole lot bigger than I ever expected. Just not in a good way. To set the scene a bit, I've got this Aunt Carla, who's 52 and always in my business. I never really cared for her much growing up. She's one of those people who compares everyone to her daughter, Megan. Megan's 24 and yeah, she's pretty, but seriously, there's not much else going on up there, if you get what I mean. Megan's like one of those people you wonder how they even make it through a day without forgetting how to breathe. But whatever. I've always been the smart one in the family, and Megan's been the pretty one. Carla never missed a chance to remind me of that. So Jake and I had been planning our wedding for this October. I was super excited because we were going to make it perfect, you know. Just before that, though, I got accepted to this summer program in the UK for work. Jake was totally cool with it, or at least I thought he was. Everything was fine when I left in June. We were talking every day, texting and all that. But after like 2 weeks, things just started to feel off. I'd text him, and his replies would take longer and longer. When we did talk, it was like he was distracted or just not interested. I asked him what was up, and he kept saying stuff like, "Oh, I'm just stressed about work," or "It's nothing, I'm fine." Typical guy, right? Always pretending like nothing's wrong when everything's clearly wrong. I figured maybe it was the distance or something, but we weren't new to long distance. We'd done it before without a problem, so I brushed it off. I was like, "We'll work it out when I get back." Well, turns out there wasn't anything to work out when I got back, because Jake decided to take the coward's way out and just disappear. A week before my program was supposed to end, he ghosted me, straight up. No more texts, no more calls, just radio silence. I remember thinking, there's no way this guy just bailed on me, right? Like, we're literally engaged. I felt so dumb for even wanting to fix things, because it was like he didn't care anymore. Still, I tried to hold on to the idea that maybe something else was going on, like maybe he was going through something and he'd reach out eventually. But nope, nada. I didn't hear from him at all. Then, about a month later, after I'd been back home for a bit, there's a knock at my door, and who is it? Freaking Carla. She's got this smirk on her face that I should have known meant bad news. Now, let me just say, Carla isn't the type to just drop by for a visit. If she's coming to your house, there's a reason, and it's usually not a good one. So, I open the door, and she hands me this fancy little envelope. "What's this?" I ask, already feeling like my stomach was doing flips. "It's a wedding invitation, sweetie," she says, all casual-like. Now, at this point, I'm thinking, oh, cool, someone's getting married. But when I opened it and saw Jake's name next to Megan's, I literally felt like the ground was about to open up and swallow me whole. They were getting married. My fiancé was marrying my freaking cousin. I must have stood there for a solid minute, just staring at the invitation, not even blinking. Carla, being the absolute piece of work that she is, just stood there watching me. I swear she was enjoying every second of my confusion. When I finally looked up, I couldn't even form words. Like, how do you even respond to something like that? Before I could say anything, Carla goes, "I know this must be hard for you, but sweetie, what can we do? People fall in and out of love all the time." She actually said that, like it was no big deal that my fiancé had dumped me while I was away to marry her daughter. Her reasoning? Oh, Jake and Megan just connected, you know. After work, he'd take her for coffee, and well, you can't fight love, right? At this point, I'm just staring at her, my head spinning. The woman is practically gloating, and I'm over here about to throw up. Then she hits me with, "Don't blame Megan, though. You know how beautiful she is." I'm sure Jake just couldn't resist. I wanted to punch her. I really did. But instead, I just kind of stood there, tears in my eyes, trying to process what she was telling me. My aunt, the one who always treated me like crap compared to her perfect daughter, was now telling me that Jake had fallen for Megan because she was prettier. And the worst part? She was saying it like it was my fault for not being as pretty as Megan. I somehow managed to pull myself together enough to tell her I had something to do, and she needed to leave. As she walked out, she threw in one last comment. Don't take it too hard, sweetie. You're still young. I'm sure you'll find someone eventually. Just, you know, lower your standards a bit. Yeah, she actually said that. When she finally left, I slammed the door so hard I thought it might break off the hinges. I didn't know whether to scream, cry, or just sit there in silence. I ended up doing a mix of all three. I couldn't believe the nerve of her, and I couldn't believe that Jake, would do something like this. The guy who I was going to marry, who I thought loved me, had been seeing my cousin behind my back, and now they were getting married. It was like a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. Over the next few days, the whole thing just kind of settled in. I kept replaying all these little moments in my head, wondering if there were signs I missed, if I could have done something differently. But honestly, looking back, Jake was just a coward. Instead of telling me straight up that he didn't want to be with me, he ghosted me and ran off with my cousin. The worst part? Everyone knew. My whole family knew, and no one told me. They all just played along with Carla's little game, pretending like nothing was happening while they planned a wedding behind my back. It was humiliating. I felt like the biggest fool in the world, but I wasn't going to stay down forever. Nope. I had plans. Big plans. And if Jake thought he was going to walk away from this without facing any consequences, he had another thing coming. So, after my Aunt Carla dropped that little wedding bombshell on me, I was left standing there, totally wrecked. But you know what? I wasn't going to let them just walk away from this without feeling some consequences. Sure, I was hurt, but that pain started turning into something else pretty quick. Anger. And with anger comes motivation. I decided that I wasn't going to be the one sitting around feeling sorry for myself while they lived it up like nothing happened. Jake and I had shared a lot of stuff. One of the biggest things was a trust fund we'd started together. We weren't super rich or anything, but we both saved up for years with plans to use it to start our own business once we were married. It was mostly my idea, to be honest, because Jake never really had a head for finances. That should have been a red flag, right? But hindsight is 20/20. Anyway, I was the one managing the whole thing. I put in most of the money because Jake was saving up for his dream of being a writer. Spoiler, he sucked at writing. So after Carla's lovely visit, I logged into the trust fund account, and there it was, all our savings, just sitting there, waiting. Now, I could have done the nice thing and left Jake's share untouched, but after what he did? Nah, I wasn't feeling very charitable. I transferred every last penny into my own account. He'd contributed maybe 20%, but honestly, after everything I'd spent on him during our relationship, supporting his writing career, paying for his stuff when he wasn't working, I figured this was more than fair. I thought, let's see how you start your business now, buddy. He had no clue I even had access to everything. In his mind, that money was still sitting pretty, waiting for the day we'd use it together. The joke was on him. He was about to get a rude awakening, but I'd save that for later. A few weeks go by, and I'm hearing all kinds of gossip from family and friends. Apparently, Jake quit his job around the time we got engaged to focus on writing, but it wasn't really going anywhere. No surprise there, he wasn't exactly disciplined. Instead of putting in the hours and hustling, he'd spend his days with Megan, going to cafes, acting like he was some tortured artist. Carla was loving it, though. She thought Jake was going to make it big, and when he did, her daughter would be married to a successful writer. Delusional, right? But then reality started catching up to them. I found out through my mom, who by the way was just as disgusted by all of this as I was, that Jake hadn't had a steady client in months. He was barely scraping by, relying on Megan's part-time job as a receptionist to cover their expenses. I laughed so hard when I heard that. Here's Carla, who thought she was marrying her daughter off to this rich, successful guy, and now they were struggling to pay rent. At this point, I still hadn't heard from Jake, and I was perfectly fine with that. Let him live in his little fantasy world for as long as he could. But of course, you can't avoid reality forever. One day, I was at my mom's house, just catching up on things, and there's a knock at the door. You can probably guess who it was, Jake, standing there with this pathetic look on his face like a lost puppy. My mom looked at me like, "Do you want me to get rid of him?" But I shook my head. I was ready for this. Jake came in all awkward, trying to make small talk like we were still on good terms or something. I just sat there, letting him squirm. Finally, he got to the point. I need to talk to you about the trust fund, he said. I didn't say anything at first, just raised an eyebrow. He continued, I know things ended badly, but we had that money saved up, you know, for the business. He was stumbling over his words, clearly nervous. I need my half of it now. Let me tell you, it took everything in me not to burst out laughing right then and there. I just calmly said, What money? Jake looked confused. The trust fund. The one we were saving up together. Oh, that, I said, pretending like I just remembered. Yeah, I liquidated it. His face turned white. You what? I took all the money out, I said, keeping my tone as nonchalant as possible. It's gone. He went from shock to anger in about 2 seconds. How could you do that? That was our money. We were going to start a business with that. I shrugged. There is no we anymore, remember? You're married to Megan now. And technically most of that money was mine anyway. I supported you for months when you weren't working, so I'd say it evens out. Jake looked like he was going to explode. That's not fair. I put in money too. Yeah, and I spent a lot of my own money keeping you afloat, I shot back. So, unless you want to take this to court and try to explain how you used my debit card to cover your bills when you weren't working, I'd suggest you drop it. He looked at me, mouth open, completely speechless. I could see the gears turning in his head as he realized he had no leg to stand on. If he pushed this any further, he'd end up owing me more than he already did. Fine, he muttered, clearly defeated. I'll drop it. He got up to leave, but not before giving me one last pleading look. I'm in a bad spot, you know. I don't have a job, and Megan's barely making enough for both of us. I thought maybe we could talk. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. But then I remembered how he'd ghosted me, married my cousin behind my back, and expected me to just roll over and take it. So I just smiled and said, Good luck with that. He left, and I felt this huge weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in weeks, I actually felt like I was getting control of my life back. So after Jake came by and realized he wasn't getting a dime from me, I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd slink off and try to get his life together, you know, face the consequences of his choices like an adult. But of course, that would have been too easy, right? Things were just about to get messier, because apparently Jake wasn't the only one with his eyes on the trust fund. A few days after the Jake situation, I'm chilling at my mom's place again, thinking I could actually have some peace. Wrong. There's another knock at the door. This time it's Carla. And honestly, I should have expected this. Of course, if Jake had come begging for money and got nothing, Carla would show up next. She was always the type to think she could talk her way out of anything. And I guess she thought she'd just show up and charm her way into getting some of that money back for her precious daughter. I opened the door. Carla immediately goes into this fake smile mode. Hi, sweetie. We were just in the neighborhood and thought we'd stop by. Yeah, sure. Just happened to be in the neighborhood. Megan's standing behind her looking like she's about to burst into tears, which, honestly, was probably all part of the plan to make me feel guilty. Not going to lie, it was kind of satisfying seeing her like that after everything that happened. But I wasn't about to give them the satisfaction of acting like I cared. Carla goes, Can we come in for a quick chat? Before I can even say anything, she's already walking into the living room like she owns the place. Megan trails behind, looking like a sad little puppy. I'm like, okay, what's this about? Because I'm not in the mood for any more of their BS. Carla, of course, launches straight into it. We heard you talk to Jake the other day. She starts all casual like she's discussing the weather. And, well, he mentioned the trust fund and how you liquidated it. I didn't say anything, just crossed my arms and stared at her. She's fidgeting a bit, but trying to keep her fake smile going. Look, I know things didn't end well between you and Jake, but Megan and Jake are struggling right now. It's not easy starting a marriage when money's tight, and I just thought maybe you could give them his share. It's only fair. I almost laughed out loud at that. Fair? I asked. Fair. Like how Jake dumped me and married my cousin behind my back? That kind of fair? Carla waved her hand like I was talking about some minor inconvenience. Oh, sweetie, don't be so dramatic. People move on. Things change. But this money, this is about starting their life together. They need it. And there it was. The real reason for her visit. It wasn't about me or any kind of closure. Carla was just here to beg for money as usual. I glanced at Megan, who was still trying to look sad, but I could tell she was just as desperate as Carla. I sighed, trying to keep calm. "Look, Carla," I said, "I'm not giving them any money. Jake doesn't deserve a thing from me, and frankly, neither does Megan. They made their bed. Now they can lie in it." That's when Megan finally spoke up. Her voice was shaky, like she was about to cry for real this time. "Please, it's not like we're asking for much. We're going to get evicted if we don't pay rent soon." I didn't know things would get this bad. I raised an eyebrow. "So let me get this straight. You're telling me you had no idea that Jake wasn't making any money when you two got married?" Megan hesitated for a second, then shook her head. "He told me he was working on some writing projects. I thought it would pay off, but it hasn't. I thought things would be different." I rolled my eyes. "Yeah, well, guess what? Things aren't different. Jake's a bum, and now you're stuck with him. That's your problem, not mine." Carla looked like she was getting desperate now. She stepped closer, dropping the fake friendly act. "You know, you've always been so smart. I've always admired that about you. You're doing so well for yourself, and we're just asking for a little help. You don't need the money like they do. This woman—" I swear, I could feel my blood boiling at that point. "Carla, I don't need you to compliment me to try and manipulate me. You've never given a damn about me until now, when you want something. You've always treated me like I'm less than Megan because she's prettier or whatever, and now you want me to bail her out? Are you kidding me?" She opened her mouth to protest, but I wasn't done. "And besides, you knew exactly what was going on. You were all for Jake and Megan getting married. You thought you hit the jackpot because you thought Jake was going to be some big-shot writer. Well, guess what? He's not, and that's not my problem." Carla was silent for a moment, probably realizing there was no getting through to me. Megan, on the other hand, finally broke down. She started crying, full-on sobbing, and I'll admit, for a split second, I felt bad. But only for a split second. Then I remembered everything she'd done, and that pity went right out the window. "Please," Megan sobbed. "We don't have anywhere else to go. I don't know what to do." I stared at her, feeling nothing but cold indifference. "Figure it out. You made your choice. Now live with it." Carla tried one last time, at least give them enough to cover the rent for a couple of months. They just need time to get back on their feet. "Nope," I said, shaking my head. "I'm done with all of you. You wanted Jake for Megan? You got him. You deal with the consequences." At that point, I'd had enough. I walked over to the front door and opened it. "You can see yourselves out." Carla looked furious, but she didn't say anything. She grabbed Megan by the arm, and they both stormed out, Megan still sobbing. As they left, Carla threw one last parting shot over her shoulder. "You'll regret this." I just shrugged. Maybe, but I doubt it. When they were gone, I stood there for a moment, just letting it all sink in. It felt good, like I'd finally closed the door on that chapter of my life. They were out of my life, and I wasn't about to let them back in. Later that night, I talked to my mom about everything that had happened. She laughed when I told her how Carla had tried to guilt me into giving them money. "You did the right thing," she said. "They don't deserve anything from you," and she was right. I didn't owe them a damn thing. All right. So, after Carla and Megan's failed attempt to guilt-trip me into giving them money, I thought maybe, just maybe, I could finally get some peace. But, nah, life wasn't done throwing more nonsense my way. If there's one thing I learned through all of this, it's that people like Carla and Jake don't just disappear quietly. They always find a way to stir up more drama, even when they're in the wrong. A couple of weeks go by, and I'm living my life, feeling pretty good about how I handled things. I hadn't heard anything from Jake, Carla, or Megan, which was perfect. Then, one afternoon, my mom calls me and says, "You're not going to believe this." Now, when your mom starts a conversation like that, you know something wild's about to go down. So, she tells me that Carla and Megan have been kicked out of my grandparents' house. Yeah, you heard that right. Apparently, after Carla's little visit to me, she went crying to my grandparents, begging them for help. Megan was in full drama queen mode, acting like her life was falling apart, which, I mean, to be fair, it kind of was, but my grandparents weren't having it. They'd been dealing with Carla's freeloading for years. She'd been living with them, mooching off their pension and not doing much to contribute around the house. I guess the straw that broke the camel's back was when they found out that Jake and Megan hadn't been paying rent for months and were facing eviction. My grandparents were furious. They'd always believed Carla's story that Jake was this successful writer who would take care of Megan, and now they were seeing that the whole thing was a lie. They finally had enough and told Carla that if she couldn't figure out how to support herself, she and Megan had to go. So Carla and Megan got booted out. No more free ride at the grandparents' house. They had to go find their own place, and guess what? They ended up in this tiny rundown apartment in some sketchy neighborhood. Talk about karma hitting hard. My mom was practically laughing as she told me the whole story, and honestly, I couldn't help but laugh too. I mean, this is what they deserved, right? After all the crap they pulled, it was kind of satisfying to see them finally face the consequences of their actions. But the best part? Jake had no idea this was happening. Apparently, Carla and Megan hadn't told him they'd been kicked out, and he was still under the impression that they were living comfortably at my grandparents' house. I'm not sure what their plan was, but clearly they weren't being honest with each other. Anyway, a few days after my mom's call, I get an email from Jake. Now this was surprising because, after our last conversation, I thought he was done trying to reach out to me. But nope, there he was, popping back up in my inbox. The email started off like the others, him apologizing for how things ended, saying he messed up, blah blah blah. Honestly, I didn't care about his apologies at this point, but then he started talking about how hard things were for him now. Jake mentioned that he was struggling to find work because, apparently, his writing career wasn't panning out. Big shocker there, right? He'd been trying to land new clients, but no one was interested in hiring him. He even said he was thinking about going back to his old job, which made me laugh because that was the same job he quit to pursue his passion. Funny how things come full circle. But here's the thing, Jake asked me for advice. Yes, you read that right. The guy who dumped me for my cousin was now asking me for career advice. Had to read the email twice to make sure I wasn't imagining it. He actually wanted my help figuring out what to do next, because according to him, I was always the one who knew how to handle things. I couldn't believe the nerve of this guy. I mean, after everything he did, he had the audacity to come to me for help. I didn't respond right away because, honestly, I didn't know how part of me wanted to just ignore him, but another part of me thought maybe this was my chance to show him how much he screwed up. So, after thinking it over for a bit, I replied. I kept it short and to the point. I told him that it wasn't my job to fix his problems and that he needed to figure it out on his own. I also reminded him that I wasn't the one who threw away our relationship. He was. I said something like, "You made your choice, Jake, and now you have to live with it." I didn't bother to offer any advice because, frankly, he didn't deserve it. He didn't reply, and I figured that was the end of it. But nope, there was more. A week later, I get another email, this time from Megan. She was freaking out because they were officially getting evicted and they had nowhere to go. She asked if I could please reconsider and give them some of Jake's share of the trust fund so they could get back on their feet. She said they'd been struggling ever since they got married and didn't know how they were going to make it without some financial help. Now, I could have been nice. I could have felt sorry for her and handed over some cash to help them out. But after everything they did, nah, I wasn't feeling generous. So, I replied with a simple, "Sorry to hear that, but this isn't my problem. Good luck." I hit send and didn't give it another thought. If they were hoping for a bailout from me, they were going to be disappointed. After that, I heard through the family grapevine that Carla and Megan were scrambling to find somewhere to live. They tried asking my grandparents to take them back, but my grandparents weren't having it. They'd put their foot down, and honestly, I was proud of them for it. It was about time Carla faced some consequences for her freeloading ways. As for Jake, I heard he finally gave up on his writing dreams and went crawling back to his old job. He's probably miserable, but honestly, I don't care. He made his choices and now he's living with them. Me? I'm doing just fine. I moved on, got a new job, and even started dating again. Life's good, and I don't have to deal with their drama anymore. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that sometimes karma takes its sweet time, but it always shows up in the end. So after everything that went down with Jake, Carla, and Megan, I figured things would finally settle down. But of course, that's not how life works when you've got people like them in your orbit. I thought they'd finally get the message, right? Like, stop bothering me, deal with your own problems, and let me live my life. But nope. There was still one last bit of drama waiting to unfold, and honestly, this one took me by surprise. A few months after all the eviction drama, I was pretty much back to normal. I'd gotten back into my work, started hanging out with my friends more, and I was dating again, which felt like a nice change of pace. It felt like I was finally moving on from all the nonsense. But then, out of nowhere, I get a call from my uncle, Carla's brother. Now, my uncle and I had always been cool. He wasn't really involved in the whole Carla and Megan situation, but he knew about it. He's one of those guys who stays out of family drama, but will call you if something major is going down. So when I saw his name pop up on my phone, I knew something was up. I answered, and he immediately goes, "You're not going to believe what Carla did." Here we go again. Apparently, Carla had been spreading all kinds of lies about me to the rest of the family. She'd been telling people that I was the reason Jake and Megan were struggling. According to her, I'd stolen Jake's share of the trust fund, and that's why they couldn't pay rent or make ends meet. She was going around saying that I was this greedy, selfish person who didn't care about family, and that I was ruining Megan's future. Can you believe the nerve? I was furious. Like, I'd put up with a lot of crap from Carla over the years, but this was too much. I wasn't going to let her drag my name through the mud because she didn't want to admit that her daughter married a bum. My uncle told me that most of the family didn't believe her, but some people were starting to wonder if there was any truth to her story. That's when I knew I had to put an end to this once and for all. So I decided to confront her. I wasn't going to let her keep spreading lies about me behind my back. If she wanted to play the victim, fine, but she wasn't going to do it at my expense. I called her up and told her we needed to talk face to face. She tried to act all innocent on the phone, like she didn't know what I was talking about, but I wasn't falling for it. I told her to meet me at a coffee shop the next day, and to my surprise, she actually agreed. When I got there, Carla was already sitting at a table, looking all smug, like she'd won some kind of battle. But I wasn't there to play games. I sat down and got straight to the point. "Why are you telling people I stole Jake's money?" I asked, keeping my voice calm but firm. She blinked at me, pretending to be confused. "I don't know what you're talking about, dear. I haven't said anything like that." "Yeah, right." "Cut the crap, Carla," I said. "I know you've been telling people that I took Jake's share of the trust fund. I know you've been blaming me for all the problems Jake and Megan are having, and I'm not going to let you keep spreading those lies." She sighed dramatically, like she was the one being wronged. "I'm just trying to look out for my daughter. She's been through so much, and you know that money could have helped them." I stared at her, not believing what I was hearing. "Your daughter? The one who married my fiancé behind my back? The one who lied to everyone about Jake being some successful writer? Yeah, she's really been through a lot, hasn't she?" Carla's face hardened. "You don't understand, do you? Megan is family. You should have helped her." At that point, I couldn't help but laugh. It was just so ridiculous. Help her? After everything you and Megan did to me? You seriously think I owe you anything? Carla leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper, like she was trying to intimidate me or something. "You think you're better than us, don't you? Just because you've got your life together, you think you can look down on us. But I'm telling you right now, you're going to regret this." I rolled my eyes. "I don't regret anything, Carla. You've spent years treating me like garbage, and now you're mad because I finally stood up for myself? You think you can just take whatever you want and walk all over people? But that's not how the world works." She didn't say anything for a moment, just sat there glaring at me. I could see that she was starting to realize she wasn't going to win this one. Finally, she muttered, "You'll regret it when you're all alone." That's when I knew this conversation was over. I stood up and grabbed my bag. "You know what, Carla? I'd rather be alone than surrounded by people like you." I walked out of the coffee shop, feeling lighter than I had in months. It was like I'd finally closed the door on all the toxic crap she and Megan had been putting me through, and honestly, it felt good. Later that day, I called my uncle and told him what happened. He laughed and said, "Carla's always been like that. She's never going to change. He was probably right, but at least I didn't have to deal with her anymore. As for Megan and Jake, I heard through the grapevine that they were still struggling to get by. They'd moved into an even smaller apartment, and Jake was working a dead-end job he hated. Every once in a while, I'd hear from family members that Megan was complaining about how hard things were, but I didn't really care. They made their choices, and now they were living with the consequences. Me? I was doing great. I'd moved on from the whole mess, focused on my career, and started seeing someone new. Life was good, and I wasn't going to let people like Carla or Megan bring me down anymore. If they wanted to keep playing the victim, that was their problem, not mine. And that's how it all ended. No dramatic resolution, no big apology from Carla or Megan, just me moving on with my life, and them still stuck in the mess they created. Sometimes, that's the best kind of ending you can hope for.